And I have a long land acknowledgement I want to do. So this actually comes from our friend, Sheikh El Farouk Cathy. He was with us last summer. He's amazing. And so this is the land acknowledgement that they always do at the Unity Mosque in Toronto. So I've gotten permission to lift it from him this week. So it's long, but I think it's important that it's long because it's quite comprehensive. So this is our land acknowledgement this week. Let us begin first by recognizing the history of the land we're on, and that this history is tens of thousands of years old, and that the non-human history here is the story of creation. Let us pay recognition to those who nurtured and honored the lands. Let us recognize the historical colonial dispossession, occupation, and theft of the land, the systematic elimination of the people from this land, and the subsequent repopulation of these spaces with new people from the outside. I recognize that some who came with guns, and some came under guns. Some came with whips, and some came under whips, and bound by slave shackles. Let's recognize the blood spilt in honoring this land in the anti-colonial struggle and the fight against apartheid capitalism. To end systematic and institutional violence, we must center the narratives of Indigenous peoples in our struggle for dignity and justice. Those amongst us who are not Native or Indigenous to Turtle Island, especially those of us who are settlers or of settler descent, directly benefit from the occupation, colonization, and the ongoing genocide of the Indigenous people of this land. We settlers also directly benefit from the kidnapping and forced labor of Indigenous peoples from Turtle Island and other places in the world. In solidarity against occupation, colonization, and the injustices inflicted on the First Nations, I acknowledge that today we're meeting on the land of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Some of you online are on the land of other nations. So if you'd like, please feel free to write those nation names in the live chat. Let's remember our connection to our siblings in these nations and pray for the day in which we might be with them in right relationship. And let us also acknowledge that recognizing whose land we're on is just a start, but we cannot stop there. There can be no reconciliation without conciliation, and there can be no conciliation without reparations. Those here who are not First Nations, Inuit, or Métis must remember that we're guests on this land, and we must be good guests. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders now, both past and present, in particular Indigenous elders, who may be with us today physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. I recognize the historic injustices of slavery, forced migrations, and indentured labor, past and ongoing. And finally, I recognize in all these struggles the bodies, minds, and souls of the oppressed and the exploited, and the spirits and presence of our ancestors. Thank you for joining us today.